Hi, my name is Joseph Richberg, Senior Data Architect at Penguin Random House. On today's Azure tutorials, we are going to discuss managed identities in function apps. Let's begin. So here we are in Visual Studio Code. It's a C# application. It's actually housed in a function app in Azure. It backends to an Azure SQL database. And what I'm going to show you today is how to use Active Directory to authenticate this application to the back end. Traditionally, when an application is connecting to a database, you have a username and password provided by the DBA group. There's one for dev, one for test, one for production, and generally these are kept in environment variables. One of the things I don't like about that is it's very hard if you want to rotate passwords to change them, because as time goes on, as more and more applications may borrow the user ID and password, I've seen that happen where you have user ID and password that connects to production for this app. Another app is created, and they use the same user ID and password. When you want to rotate those user IDs and passwords, then you have to find all of the applications. And sometimes you have old applications. As well as now with the proliferation of source control, there is a chance by mistake that a developer would push up into source control in one of the files the user IDs and passwords. Generally, that doesn't happen, but that's a concern. So to alleviate these concerns, I was looking to use Active Directory. Since the entire application that we have here, both the front end, this function app, which serves as an API middleware, and the back end are all in Azure, I was looking for Active Directory as a way to manage the authentication. And in doing some digging, I found it. And so I wanted to pass this along to everyone as to how you can authenticate your function apps that reside in Azure against your databases. So the first thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need to load or install the app authentication library that's in Microsoft Azure Services. Now, this is a class I have called Foundation, and it just has a bunch of static classes because function apps are static. They're stateless, so I don't want to have to constantly call this token provider, because what you'll find if you've done any work with Active Directory is that generally takes up to a second or sometimes 1.5 seconds to go out, authenticate a user, and return a token. So you don't want to do that every time there's a call to any of your API that it goes out and gets a new provider. So the first call that'll go out will get a new token provider, and then that token provider manages the refreshes of the tokens. It's really nice. So the first thing I do here is I create a token provider as a static read-only object. Now, C# is not my primary language, so if someone is looking at this video and says, oh, there's a more efficient way for you to do what you're looking to do, by all means, hit me up in the comments below. I'm always looking to improve in anything that I do. So back to what I'm doing. Back to the code. So public static read-only, it's a token provider. This will set up the connectivity to the Active Directory and get a provider, which will then manage the tokens. So I'll go to one of my API calls. And in the API call, once I get a request, the first thing I do is this. This is how you actually get a token. So access token await DB connection. That was the previous C# code you saw. Token provider. That's the static call. Get access token async. Remember, we want everything asynchronous. This seems to be part of the call. I'm guessing because I'm doing a database connection, you always put this. I don't put the actual name of the database. I put this, and Active Directory determines all of the services I have access to. And then configure await false. Of course, we want this to be asynchronous. This access token here is what you pass into your SQL connection. So if I go down here, and I'm calling process request, which is here, I pass in the access token. Here is where you use it. So normally you'll have con.create, and you'll have a string of the database connection, where you're going. You don't have to do that anymore. What you do is you simply do access token. And this passes the token into the connection, and then you open the connection. It's as simple as that. What I like about this is every time this function app is called, it makes this call here to the token provider get access token. And if the token, of course, expires, the token provider will get you a new one. So you never have to worry about constantly making a call out. It's all done for you. It's simple as can be. So now that your code is set up, how do you connect your function app? So let's get to the function app. So here we are in a function app. One of the things you want to do is on the left-hand side in your function app, you go down to identity. When you get to identity, you're going to see system assigned and user assigned. This will be off. You click it to on. When you click it to on, you're going to get an object ID. This object ID is now registered inside of Active Directory. More importantly, you're going to have this up here. The name of your function app is actually what you're going to remember. Don't worry about this object ID. So you're going to have a name, and it's whatever you named your function app. That name is now, for all intents and purposes, a user in Active Directory. And now all you have to do is jump over to the database, and in the database, you're going to grant access to that user to your services, which I'll show you. So here we are in Azure Data Studio, and now that function app, because you have a system assigned ID, is no different than a user. Active Directory doesn't know whether it's a human being or another application. It's just an identity given a label, and the label is a function app name. So here you create user, you put your function app name as external provider. That tells the Azure SQL database, go to Active Directory and make sure that this label exists as a quote user. Now, what we do for an additional level of security is our APIs connect to the backend through store procedures, more specifically through a specific schema that the store procedures are registered to. So we take it a next step and we grant execute on that specific schema to that function app. So now that function app only has access to execute the store procedures that we provide. And that's it. You've eliminated the need for the traditional SQL user IDs and passwords. Once again, I hope this was informative, and if you have any comments or questions or something you'd like to see, please leave a comment below, like, subscribe, and again, if there's something in the C# code that you saw that I could improve on, please again hit me up in the comments and let me know. Thanks.